Okay, that's cool. Because I've read some different articles on, some of the outcomes of a particular crash, and one in particular sticks in my mind. It took place in Florida, and this is a few years ago, where they were able to determine that the driver did not actually apply the brakes until half a second before impact, and it was like, holy precise, like, you know. So, and it was like, how did they determine that? Now you've explained how that's determined, so it's interesting. And,
Yeah.
and we know that there's you have lag time in your brake. You also have reaction time and perception time, which take up, a second and a half, give or take. So now you know that that guy didn't even realize what was happening till he was like 2 seconds within that crash time before he actually got his foot on the brake pedal and did anything.
Yeah, perception reaction time. It's good that you bring that out because that's something a lot of people are not familiar with, right? They'll say like,
Yeah.
well, he didn't brake until a second before the crash, right? But realistically, he needs time to be able to deceive that something is actually occurring, that person
Yep.
that there is a collision imminent, and that a reaction from him is required, right? If you have
Yep.
someone, it's like if you approach an intersection, you got a pedestrian waiting at that little concrete median there, right? That's
Hmm.
that little
Hmm.
little island, you know what I'm talking about? You're not
Yep.
anticipating them to walk in front of you. And then if you see them start
Hmm.
to walk and not run, you see them start to walk, you're also anticipating probably that they're going to go behind
Yep.
you. A lot of people do that, right?
Yep.
They'll begin walking, they'll anticipate you're going 50 kilometers an hour, so you're going to go through, this person's going to go behind you, but now they start running. And so now your
Yep.
perception reaction changes. And now it's okay, collision might be imminent. Does
Yep.
this warrant an action, right?
Right.
And so it's a
Right.
big difference there. And then you have the air brake leg, like you mentioned. Then you have the leg for the brakes to actually actuate, and you have the
Hmm.
leg for
Hmm.
for them to be applied to full
Yep.
capacity, right? Because if you're just
Yep.
touching them, you're like 0.1 G. You push them all the way down, that's when you get the 0.7 G. So
Right.
there's a bunch of delays associated with that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I did some training recently with a group of drivers on that. We are kind of using the science of it, on your perception, your reaction, brake lag, and then the time to get it stopped. And all this time, if you're traveling at 105 kilometers an hour, you're covering 96 feet per second. And it's like if it takes you 2 seconds to get the brakes to activate, you've just traveled darn near 200 feet. And if
Yeah.
you were 50 feet behind that car when he hit the brakes, you've just turned that Cadillac into a Toyota. So, it doesn't take much very quickly. So, all the more reason for speed and space management.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Safety first. Absolutely.
so there's lots of information here, with regards to the telemetry of the vehicle, to be able to access a lot of this stuff. One of the things that comes to mind is, are you seeing this from your end at all with regards to the maintenance of this technology from the maintenance department or a third party service provider on behalf of the motor carrier to be maintaining fault codes, and things like you talked about ABS being a key area to look at to find out what's going on with wheel spin and stuff like that. So if I've got a fault code coming up on a dash and then it goes away and it comes back and it goes away and the driver does nothing about it and doesn't tell anybody, and all of a sudden during that crash, we have another fault code that says something went wrong, yet we didn't deal with it previously. Is this something that could come back to say, yeah, this was a contributing factor of this collision?
So it's a possibility, but in my experience, it's not very common. So,
Okay.
When you mentioned ABS, I mentioned that because when you do an ABS module download, you get something called
Hmm.
a DTC report, which is essentially showing a historical timeline of all the DTCs that have been present on the ABS module, even if they're not active, if they're expired,
Right.
or they're not, if they're pending, perhaps you'll still get that record. You'll have engine
Right.
hours reporting when those DTCs occurred. You'll have a little
Hmm.
description. Then if you look at the Bendix manual, it'll say like what the diagnosis and what the troubleshooting is for that trouble
Hmm.
code. Same thing
Right.
for ECMs. When you do those downloads, you can do fault code snapshots as well.
Hmm.
And similarly, those will either have an engine hour printout on the snapshot data if it's associated with snapshot data, or it'll have an odometer reading. So
Hmm.
you can see like if there was an issue with like low coolant or some like def fluid issue that's
Hmm.
before the crash, right? It's probably not contributory. It's not going to cause them to lose control and swerve into oncoming traffic, right?
Hmm.
But if you see something with like a steering wheel position sensor or a wheel speed sensor or something, maybe that would cause a speedometer to be kind of out of wonk, and maybe the
Hmm.
speedometer was not reading properly. The driver was aware of it, but he was just traveling, quote unquote, at the speed of traffic.
Hmm.
You could determine that as a fault code and maybe have that to corroborate a story that there was some mismanagement of their maintenance
Right.
before the crash.
Right. Right. I know we've heard a lot about the reptilian theory when it comes to particularly nuclear verdicts and rewards and whatnot. So I always kind of go, okay, well, what is out there that could be played in that fashion? And that's where I guess I look at the maintenance, that if you had a vehicle, and sadly in this time and day and age, we kind of talked a little bit before the show here, was that when it's tight, companies pull back on certain things, whether it's their safety management or maybe even the maintenance of their vehicles. In this case, if you're not maintaining your vehicle properly and there are problems with this, it may not been contributory to the incident, but I'm sure a plaintiff's lawyer could take that and spin it in a reptilian aspect to go, these guys don't maintain their vehicles. Look at during the reconstruction, they found all these fault codes that weren't being maintained as they should have. So,
They
all the
could,
more
and,
reason to make sure you're maintaining your equipment.
And that's another thing, is not also just from the fault codes, right? But even if there is some issues that with the, maybe some brake deficiency that wouldn't necessarily record a fault code, but the brakes are out of spec per CVSA guidelines or something, right? And
Right.
that's why sometimes I have a mechanical, a heavy duty mechanic attend inspection with me, like a post impact inspection, just to at the request of the client most of the time, and to affirm that the steering wheel, the steering column, the steering gear is functional. If all the brakes are functional, nothing's out of spec. There is no chassis or loose bolts that would have contributed to some shakiness or vibration of the driver, corroborated with loss of control events, something like that. So definitely you can do the fault code analysis, but you can also do the physical examination of the truck, which is pretty common for us to do as well.
Right.
So Robert, I got a question for you. That
Yeah.
Just before I left being engaged actively in the industry, I sourced a few Volvos as a part of a fleet upgrade. And in speaking with the representatives at the time, one of the things that they said is, to a certain extent, they have real-time connectivity to some of the sensors on the truck. So this means to me that the trucks must be communicating through some network and the cloud, and there's a record of that. So is there, over and above what you're downloading, data that's been accumulated in the cloud that is available for access in the event of a critical situation?
And so the ones I'm familiar with would be like this, any of the ELD or GPS stuff, or the Bendix Safety Direct system. I'm sure there is probably some manufacturer-specific information. Like I would probably look at some of the the leading ones in industry, like Volvo, because they have a lot of electronics data on their trucks, and they have a lot of new information that's not being so easily publicly accessed. And some of the Freightliner or the new Cascadia vehicles, they have this feature with their collision mitigation system called Detroit Assurance, and that system is only downloadable by a specialist when given access to by the manufacturer themselves. Like you have to actually reach out to Daimler before you go download the truck and say, here's the VIN, here's the owner's authorization, please allow me access to download this Detroit Assurance collision mitigation system from the truck, and they provide you specific access for that one specific truck, one specific VIN. So there's definitely some communication in the background with their trucks, whether it's over the cloud or whether it's I'm not sure how they're doing it, but there's definitely something in the background. And so Bendix for sure has this thing called Safety Direct, which is basically mostly geared towards safety managers and fleet managers, but essentially it's a service offering where they can go online to a web portal, and they can even do like live dash cam feeds from the driver's dash cam that's built in with the Bendix camera there, and do drive-throughs. Essentially, they can communicate with the driver. You have the walkie-talkie or the radio with your driver, and they can say, hey, I'm at this construction site. Here's exactly what I'm seeing through the camera, right? And so they can get incident reports that way. They can get near collision events, because the camera and the radar system are recording near collision events. They can record overspeed events that are being sent directly to the cloud, to the Safety Direct portal. And I'm sure there's other service offerings for that, sure, as well. But
so the days of our little ECM and the DDEC or the DEC reports that we all used to get for maintenance, those are kind of in the past. We
still get those for sure. Like that's the EDR stuff I was talking about with the ECM data, the DDEC reports, right? But certainly, like you said, and that's like where the Bendix is kind of taking the charge with their Bendix data recorders on the ABS modules, and they have the Safety Direct portal. Wabco has systems as well for collision mitigation systems for recording video, recording photos from the camera that's installed in the windshield. as part of the collision mitigation system. So everything, there's almost too much data nowadays. Back before, you just go to the collision scene, see some tire marks, and calculate speed based on a skid, right? But nowadays, it's like I got to need this module, that module, I need a CPC, an MCM, an ECM, put them all together, and then I need ABS, I need this and that, and just it's kind of cumbersome at some point, right? But I always thought that more information would mean that I might not have a job, but realistically, it means I have more of a job because now there's more stuff that to track down,
Now
and
you
more
need an
stuff, more
assistant.
confusion. Yeah.
Does this make it more of a definitive, when you come to a conclusion, it's more definitive because of the data that you have?
Well, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, if I was going to do a speed, speed from a tire mark or speed from an energy analysis based on vehicle damages, right? There's always a wider range than there would be if I had electronic data from the vehicle,
right?
Because I can validate that electronic data with the physical parameters in the truck, like I was mentioning before. I have published literatures, published papers on that specific ECM or that specific module that tells me the accuracy of tested accuracy. They did 100, 150 tests, they did brake tests, they did acceleration tests. I can confirm that the accuracy is within a range, and instead of going from a range of maybe 10 to 20 kilometers, I can kind of fine tune that to maybe 5 to 10.
Wow.
So
cool.
Circling back to where we started at the beginning of this conversation, for those carriers who are saying, I don't need to worry about telematics. If I don't look at it, it can't be used against me.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
The other side is saying, oh, you didn't use your telematics? All right, let's go digging.
We did. Yeah.
So thanks. I think this has been very enlightening and somewhat scary. I think every time we start to open up this Pandora's box of what is actually now being recorded, it's eye-opening, and this is the sort of stuff that some safety managers probably go home and go, oh no, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. But at the same time, the smart ones are going, how do I get to know this better? How do I use this to improve? And how do I become good at managing this data to reduce my opportunity of being involved in a crash? Therefore, I don't need Robert to show up on my doorstep asking to have access to my ECM.
That's right. Yeah, we want to put Robert out of work by not needing him at work.
Yeah.
Not that we want to put you out of work, and I'm fairly sure that you're going to be okay. I mean, like job security, I think is probably fairly good for you. You're the only one for Envista in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm actually Envista as a whole for the most part. Yeah, we have people that do vehicle downloads, but I'm the only one that does reconstructions. Yeah.
Given the truck frequency, crash frequency, I think you're going to be just fine until you get at least to our age from a job security perspective.
Maybe by then they'll have 4 more of you.
Yes,
I hope so. Yeah, we're looking to hire eventually soon here, I think.
Yeah.
But cool. One thing I always suggest to carriers is try and be proactive and not reactive, right? When I was doing that AMTA presentation, I said the number one thing, if you take anything away from this presentation, is take away the checklist I provided that says, here's what engines are available in what vehicles, here's what ABS modules are supported for good data, good downloads, and then create an Excel spreadsheet or, some type of spreadsheet that allows you to say, here's my fleet of 40 vehicles, here's my fleet of 100 vehicles, and here's their VINs, here's their engine types, and here's what data is associated on those trucks, and here's the safety systems I have on those trucks. Because when that truck inevitably gets involved in a crash, you don't have to be questioning whether it has data, what kind of data it can have, and how to collect it. You've got that spreadsheet ready and prepared, and you say, I've got X, Y, and Z, and I need to collect those using A, B, and C. And just kind of have that in the back pocket rather than trying to scramble after the fact and being all worrisome about where data could exist.
Right. Yep, makes sense.
And that just for curiosity, because I can hear someone saying, where can I get that? Robert, where can people get that information?
So I provided as a handout to the attendees at the AMTA presentation. I'm sure I can probably give you guys a handout as well if that's something that's providable. If not, then you can always feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure they'll have my contact information, and you just feel free to reach out. You can provide me a VIN and say what data does this truck have, and I'll say X, Y, and Z, and that's not going to be at a charge either. It's going to be just feel free to reach out.
Well, feel free to share it with us, and we'll post it somewhere where everyone can access it. And if not, we're just going to put your email address out there, just like,
Hey, I said it's okay. Don't worry.
You want to
Good.
know about trucks?
Yeah.
Contact Robert.
Yeah. So this has been
Cool.
awesome, Robert. Thank you very much.
Thanks
I appreciate
so much,
it.
Robert. Appreciate it. We'll let you get
Absolutely,
back to
happy to
those
be on here.
12
Thanks for having me as a
reports that
guest.
we're holding you up from.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Compliance Clips is a joint production of Summit Risk Solutions and Links Consulting. Thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in our next release. Take care.